Okay, this is number 62 in section 7.4. This is combined all the different concepts we've talked about so far in this section. Well, it's combining 7.4 plus it's going to be combining 7.1 and 7.2. We're going to be talking about, we're trying to confirm this identity up here. That is what we're trying to do. So this is what we're trying to confirm. We're trying to confirm this identity up here. If I can point it out. We're trying to figure out that identity right there. Okay, the first step you got to do is to go ahead and write it out. Write out the addition identity there. So sine x plus y equals sine x cosine y plus cosine x sine y. And then it's multiplied by sine x cosine y minus cosine x sine y. Okay, this is an especially tricky problem. This is an especially tricky problem. Okay, so what happens here is, look at this. That's just a difference of two squares. Do you see why I put one big green line underneath that one and two big green lines underneath the other term? Because you see how you have sine x cosine y right there? And then you have cosine x sine y. You're multiplying and you have a plus and a minus. And look at that. It just becomes a difference of two squares. That's what we're looking at. Sine x cosine y, which is this one here, squared, minus cosine x sine y squared. Okay, I'll give you a few more moments to write all that down. Okay, now this is where we're going to have to figure out that identity right here. Okay, I'm going to distribute the square. So I distributed the square right there. So sine squared x cosine squared y minus cosine squared x sine squared y. God, it looks so close to what that one is, right? But we're not there yet, unfortunately. Okay, what we're going to do, this is something I had to look up even in the God book because it was a tough one right here. Okay, we're going to use the fact that cosine squared y is 1 minus sine squared y. Okay, we're going to ignore that side for now. If you try to do this problem on your own, you'd be doing this for a few hours on end probably, unfortunately. So just take a look at what we're doing here. Again, cosine squared is 1 minus sine squared. I'm going to distribute the sine squared x. So I'm going to have sine squared x minus sine squared x sine squared y minus cosine squared x sine squared y. Okay, so I just distributed it. Now I'm going to factor this one now. So I'm going to have sine squared x minus, I can take out a minus sine squared y, that's what they both have in common. And I have sine squared x plus cosine squared x. So take a look at what I just did there. So again, I converted this again from cosine squared to 1 minus sine squared. I distributed. Okay, and now I factored these two terms right there. I factored these two terms. Those two, this one and that one. You see how they have a sine squared y in common and a minus sign? So that I factored them out. And what is sine squared x plus cosine squared x? And it is just 1. So I'm going to have sine squared x minus sine squared y times 1, which I'm going to just ignore, equals sine squared x minus sine squared y. Very, very difficult in my opinion. That is a very difficult problem, but you can see how these problems can get very nasty very quickly now. I mean, these concepts in general are not very hard. It's just being able to see something like that. First off, seeing the difference of two squares. I was able to see that on my own. That one I got pretty lucky because I just know that I see something, they look the same, right? And I see that plus and minus and I'm thinking, oh, okay, difference of two squares. But later on, oh man, I didn't even know how to do it from here. I had to start. That's why I stopped right there. That's why the video started at this point because I didn't know what to do, and I had to look up. It was just 1 minus sine squared. and you had to distribute and factor. So these are not easy problems. We don't question that. You just got to be able to look at how, at least understand how all the steps work. And when it comes to the test, you're not going to have problems as difficult as this, but you can see how you need to be able to process all of the concepts at once here. We're going to do one more problem in this chapter concerning, or in this section now, where you have to combine section 7.3 and 7.4, where you have to do a trig equation plus use these identities.